If you could only share one principle around money with your daughter and you could never share another principle for the rest of her life, what would that one principle be?
Scared money don't make money.
What does that mean?
I mean, it's from a rap song, but what it means is you can't put money on a pedestal. You can't be afraid of it, right? Money is a resource. It is there. The minute you're afraid of money, the minute you're afraid of anything, that thing wins. And it's always you versus the thing. It's you versus food. It's you versus money. It's you versus religion. It's you versus that guy, that girl. It's you versus traffic. The minute you get afraid of it, then it wins. And you can talk about how, well, it's not all about winning and losing. It's about enjoying the game. And I get part of that, but I also don't. And I want her to know that money is a resource and it is there to provide her with options. So I don't ever want her to be afraid of it. I don't ever want her to be too excited about it either, right? To be so afraid of it, she gets so obsessed with it, because that is also not the right way. And, you know, you've got to be able to spend money to make money. We were just talking about that before we started, right? Like, I've always put myself in uncomfortable financial situations because I know myself and I know that I will fight my way out of it, so that future Ryan looking back in time will say, dude, remember when I was afraid of rent? Now look what I'm afraid of. And I think it's tough for people to learn that if you're scared of money, you will not be able to make money, and you will let money rule your life and control your life, and you will forever be a slave to rent. You'll forever be a slave to the dollar. You'll check your bank account 10 times a day out of anxiety, or you'll never check it because you're so nervous about what's not in there. And then you'll just become another cog in the wheel of society, and you'll just become a worker bee. And that's, and I don't want her to do that. You know, I want her to know that, especially now in the 2020s, man, in the 2020s, the 2030s, the 2040s, like she can do whatever she wants. She can be whoever she wants. She could be the president. She could go, with Elon Musk's little kid, whose name I don't know, and go like start a new business on Mars. Like, let's go, whatever you want to do.
Do you feel like there's every time you hit a new level of financial opportunity, financial gain, success, do you feel like the old fears come up? You've got to spend 20 times more in rent than you ever have before. Is there the same fear, or do you feel like you can ever master the fear no matter how much more money you're dealing with?
I don't know if you ever master anything. I think you make things relative, and I think you keep pushing, but it also depends on what makes you happy, right? Like, I am the type of person, and I know this about myself, I am not going to be happy in a nice 3-bedroom house with a fence and like a car and the ability to go on vacations and just like live an awesome life. Like, that's an awesome life for so many people. And I envy those people who can be okay with that. I am not okay with being okay. And, I have always wanted more, not out of greed, but kind of like a mountain climber, right? You read the interviews and the books and the podcasts of the guys that have climbed Kilimanjaro and Everest. It's like, dude, why the would you do that? Like, it's, you don't have to climb the mountain. You can go around. They're like, I climb it because it's there. Like, they can't not, and I feel the same way about my own life and my own career. There's so many paths I could have gone down that just definitely wouldn't have worked out. But if you can find that one where things start to work a little bit, you get take it as far as you can, because who knows when you'll get that opportunity again. And life is really, really, really quick. And then the next thing you know, COVID, and you have the blood type that is not going to be okay. And I wish I had just taken advantage of that opportunity last year. And I never want to be the type of person who says, if only like that.
Yeah.
I think
I wish I would have.
Yeah. If only, are probably the two scariest words that I can think about, because before I know it, I'm going to be at a point in my life and older where I hope not, but I could look back and say, well, if only I'd done that when I was 30, 36, 15. And I understand that regret is a part of life, and there's always going to be mistakes. There's always going to be things we missed. If only I'd bought Bitcoin at $100, stuff like that. But
Right.
I'd rather regret the things I did than the things I never tried.
What's some of the greatest lessons or lesson you've learned from some of your clients? Maybe they weren't actually even trying to teach you something, but just by their energy, their way of being, of you showing the homes or the conversations you had with negotiations, or just their approach to life. Was there any few lessons that have really stuck out from maybe the uber successful, billionaires, or in the first couple of years when you were just working with, people that were maybe buying less fancy homes?
Oh man, I feel like I learned something from every single one of my clients because they come from a different walk of the earth that I've never been on, right? Like, we all have our own journeys, we all learn our own lessons. I'll say, like, if I dig down, one of my first rental clients ever, because I got into the business at the end of 2008 so that I could stay in New York City so that I could pay rent. Right. And so real estate was way better than waiting tables or bartending or getting a temp job and being a receptionist or going back to school or moving home. And so I would post ads for rental listings on Craigslist. I'd meet people on the corner of Christopher and Greenwich, and I would get lost with them in the West Village trying to find like that walk-up building to go up 6 flights of stairs to hope to God the door would be left open for me, because if it's not, then I'm the worst. And trying to rent, apartments for $1,000 to $3,000 a month, right? It was nearly 2 years of my life.
Man, I wish rent was that cheap right now in New York.
Yeah, right.
Greenwich and Christopher for $1,000 a month. Give me that rent.
Now that was more like Avenue D, and that was like run real fast to get up there.
Yeah.
But I had one client, a girl, her name was Jessica, and she, was renting an apartment, her and her 2 roommates. And so we were looking kind of like ideally a 3-bedroom, but they couldn't afford it. So we were just going to look for a 1-bedroom that could be cut up into 3 bedrooms. And she had her parents on the phone the whole time because they were guaranteeing it and they couldn't be there. And I got lost. And West Village, I wasn't familiar with the West Village. I didn't know the streets. I knew the grid because I lived in Koreatown. I lived on 31st Street and Broadway. I knew the grid, right? It goes from east to west, north to south. Like, you can figure it out. You go to the West Village and you're like, oh, so these roads were created by horses. And no one ever changed it. So I guess I got to figure that out. And I got lost. And I got lost like twice. The first time I kind of sold my way through it. The second time, I didn't know where I was going, and I couldn't figure it out. And I didn't have an iPhone back then, right? This is early 2009. And she told me on the street that I was the worst. She regretted calling me, and that I should never be allowed to do real estate with anyone ever.
Wow.
And left. And I quickly ran the other way. I think I had like tears in my eyes. But that lesson was know your like, no matter what. Doesn't matter how long you've been in any business. Doesn't matter. Everything goes out the door. But the one thing I could control was I could have researched better. I could have prepared better. The tour that I was going to take her on, I could have woken up an hour earlier and done that tour because I knew I didn't really know where I was going. I just was lazy, right? I didn't have the time. I was like running. I found other things to be busy with. I just figured I'd figure it out. And she'll never call me ever again. I still think about her. Jessica, if you're listening, I'm sorry that we got lost in the West Village. I should have done my homework and done that, but know your. I'd say a little while after that, I met a client, an international client who really was the light bulb game changer for me because I had zero confidence in myself. No one knew me in New York City. I had made the determination at that point, okay, if I'm going to stay here and do this, I want to be the best. I want to be the best real estate broker ever. I know I'm not from here. I don't look like the best real estate broker. I definitely don't blend in, but I can figure it out. And no one would buy it. No one would believe me. I was super young. I was in my early 20s, and I had premature gray hair at the same time. So it was just sort of weird. And I didn't go to the schools here. My family's not from here. So the best agents in New York City, the ones who make millions and millions and millions of dollars, have all that. And then this international client reaches out. I super get lucky, and she flies into New York. And I just had this light bulb moment of saying to myself, you know what? I am going to be the greatest salesperson in the world for her. I'm not going to mess up like I did for Jessica or like I did for a bunch of other people. I'm going to know I'm going to memorize everything. I'm going to fall back on the information that I have in my brain, and I'm going to present myself like the real estate agent I want to be in 5 years. And she's going to see that person. I'm going to put on a show, right? Like I came to New York City to do theater. I'm going to put on the best performance of my life, and let's see what happens. And it worked. And she bought an apartment for $2.1 million. And it's not the biggest deal I've ever done in my life, but that commission, I think, was like $24,000, something like that. That was 2 years of rent. It gave me some breathing room. She proved to me that I can be whoever I want to be. I just got to believe in it. And I got to tell people. Those are probably the two biggest lessons that I learned early on in my career. I've learned lots of lessons since then, but those were two important ones that really shaped how I carried myself and started working on my career and building my brand going forward. And that was 11 years ago.
How did you learn to believe in yourself when you didn't have the credibility or the skills yet?
I realized that the most confident people in the markets that I was dealing with, so the most successful people, the most successful agents, brokers, developers, bankers, whatever, right? They carried themselves with confidence because they played the game like they already had the money in their pocket. Right?
They weren't desperate.
There's no desperation. It was, they walked into the room like they already won. And this was their second time coming here, right? Like they already had the master's jacket. They already had the green jacket at home. This is the second time. And they could keep calm. They could keep their nerves. And they always relaxed on the fact that, I played this hole before, right? I've been here before. Even if they hadn't, they'd practice it so well and studied it and rehearsed it and learned it and knew the gradients and knew everything that even if this is the first time they're hitting the ball on this hole, it's as if in their core, they've done it 100 times. And so they could believe in themselves as being the greatest golfer. And so for me, it was, okay, all I have to do is memorize information, study the information, know what I'm talking about, and then I can always fall back on facts, right? And then I just have to then believe that the facts will help me tell the stories and do the deals. And then I just have to be a person, and that's it. And I think I can be great, right? Like I looked at all these people that were doing what I was trying to do, and they were doing much better than me and making way more money. It's like, wait a minute, why not me? Right? Like it said, if only are the two scariest words in the English language for me. Why not me are the three most motivating words in the English language for me, because they always push me to do a little bit more. And so I would say that's how I was able to kind of like build that confidence, was just learn the information, right? Learn everything about a certain area. And that's how I'm going to beat the internet, right? Because these people can buy on the internet now, then and now, especially they can sell on the internet. They don't need a real estate salesperson. Real estate agents are going out of business. They're going out of style. Who needs a human anymore? Turns out humans need humans to help them make decisions. And until a house figures out how to sell itself to another house, we'll still be there. As long as we know more and can discuss the information. And that gave me the confidence to then move forward. And then I would do one deal and I would just scream it from a mountaintop so that the success of today would beget the success of tomorrow. And then just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And then here I am 13 years later.
And what's the greatest strategies you've learned about negotiating down and negotiating up? If you just negotiated down, I think you said a big amount off of rent for your new office space, but you also negotiate up to try to get the maximum out of selling as well. So when you're buying and you want to, what's the most you've taken off of a listing price that you've helped someone buy and purchase, and what was the strategy for getting it to that much off, and also in the reverse above listing?
Can I tell you something that's so interesting about that question? I've done a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of talking about real estate for 13 years. No one has ever asked me how to negotiate, and I don't know why. You're the first guy to ask me how to negotiate, and it's what I do all day long. It's so people are like, "Well, how do you close?" and talk to me about this, that. It's so interesting, and I wouldn't have known to tell you to ask me that question. Like if you had said, "Ryan, what's the one?" I wouldn't have jumped to that, and I also don't know why. But to answer your great question,
well, the reason I ask is because I feel like anyone listening, and myself, I've never purchased a home.
Sure.
I've done investments and stuff like that, but I've never purchased a home. And I'm always thinking, okay, and you triggered it by saying, well, I got this lease for, way more than the asking price off. I'm like, well, how do we negotiate down a car, a house, a whatever, and how do we negotiate up to get a premium on what the market is offering? What is the psychological strategies? What is any strategy done in an ethical manner in order to do that? Is it an energy thing? Is it psychology? Is it, the approach? What are all these things that you do? And what is the biggest down negotiation you've had and the biggest up? And then what are the strategies?
Sure. So there is an amazing movie starring Matthew McConaughey called The Ghost of Girlfriend's Past. Okay? It's classic. Everyone should see it. At the end of that movie, Michael Douglas is like his dead uncle who like taught him everything he knows about dating. And he's got a scene where he says, the one in the relationship who has all the power is the one who cares the least. And that is true for any business negotiation, house negotiation, promotion negotiation, anything.
What if you really want it? You really want it, but you can't show it.
Yeah, I'll get to that. So how to negotiate down, okay, is by far the easiest because all you have to do is not want it, right? You have to be willing to walk away. You have to be willing to be okay with loss and know there are other options. Mm-hmm. So the biggest discount I've ever gotten was probably, I would say this past summer that just happened. So listen, COVID hit and destroyed New York City. 1 million people left New York City.
Wow.
The real estate market was soft here to begin with because of oversupply, and it got real bad. Like transaction volume dropped by over 80% when COVID hit. Disaster. So the lowest market, I think, in real estate history was this past summer. So I had a buyer, which means it was a great opportunity
to buy
and for opportunists who know that you don't bet against New York City. And so there was a seller at a building called 157 West 57th Street. Okay. They bought this apartment for $34 million years ago.
Oh my
They
gosh.
outfitted it with about $2 million worth of upgrades, audio, furniture, everything.
So $36 million in.
$36 million in. It's been on the market for a while. They'd cut the price down. They're losing money. They're losing money.
What were they trying to sell it for?
I think they started really high, and then they, like everybody,
like 50 million or something. Or
yeah, I don't remember if it was that high, but then they went down. I think they eventually got down to like 25.
Wow!
So they were willing to take a $12 million loss because they own it in cash, and so it's like, what else can I do with the money? And listen, people are like, oh, I lose so much money in real estate. You don't lose money if you don't sell. So the asset is worth something when you buy. And it'll always be worth more at some point, unless you need the money today. If you need the money today, yeah, sure. Could you lose money? Yes. Which is why cash flow will kill you. But anyway, so I had a client who just wanted a great deal. He's like, listen, I don't need to buy anything in New York City. I don't even know if I would ever even use it. But
if you find me a deal of a lifetime.
Yeah, but if you find me a good deal, I'll buy. And so that to me is a challenge. Where I say to myself, all right, dude, let me see what I can find you. So I see this apartment. It's been on the market for a while. I say, let's go see it. Sees it. Okay. All right. What do you want to offer? 15.
Right now it's around 24 at this moment.
25. Yeah.
25.
So we offered 15 million. Okay. This guy's in it for 36. We offered 15, which is 10 million off the current ask, which is already reduced
20
by
million. Yeah.
Yeah. And long story short, fast forward, we held firm for 4 months. And he just said, listen, I'll buy it, but I don't need it. And we went out and we saw other things. But at the same time, I kept pushing him a little bit, like, because I want to get a deal done. So let's go 15,250, right? All right, fine. Give him another 250. It's not going to, it won't do anything. But I slowly got them to come down, 22, 20. So you could tell they wanted to do a deal, but the one in the relationship who has all the power is the one who cares the least. So I got him up to 16 and a half, and we held firm. They came back finally at 16,750, and that was the hardest negotiating I'd ever have to do, is get him up $250,000 at that level.
Up. Because he's like, I don't want it. I'm already up more than I want.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I don't need this. Why are you buying? I'm not buying this. And I again went through the whole process. I explained to him the value. It's like, the money doesn't mean anything to you, and you're buying this for 51% off. This is going to be the biggest luxury discount trade in the history of New York City. And we closed. And that's exactly what it was. Wow. CNBC, CNN, every single press. But you can look up the deal. It closed last summer. Or sorry, it was summer or it closed towards the end of the year, actually, probably. You know what? I think it closed in December. And he bought it for 51% off.
Wow.
Since then, the market's totally rebounded. So that was holding firm and basically saying, hey, please sell to someone else. By all means, please sell to someone else.
If you can find a buyer, go ahead.
Yeah. Sell to somebody else. Negotiating somebody up is a different story, right? It's the fear of loss, but on the total opposite side. And
I got a good offer here. Should I just take it and not go for more?
Sure. But if you're trying to get a buyer to pay more money, then you're working on what we call the difference between a want and a need. So how do I make a want a need? So this guy might want something. Yeah, sure, they want it. But I'm only going to get him to pay more if I convince him that he needs it. And so you have to then look for people's points of fear. If he doesn't get this, what triggers that fear? Like, what's he going to be afraid of? Is it finding something else that's as nice? Is it doing the whole process all over again and going and trying to find something else? Is it his wife is going to be pissed? Is it they won't be in the school district? Whatever it is, that fear. And you do this on both sides. For any negotiation, a tip is, and I write this down. If you're in between one side and another, you write down what makes the other side afraid, what makes that side afraid. And you play towards those fears to get the exact number you want. And oftentimes, I'll pick the number ahead of time before I even start to the negotiation. And more often than not, I always get my sides to the number I knew that they were going to come to anyway.
How do you ask what their fear is without asking them what their fear is?
You talk to them just the same way you talk to people. You ask questions. The greatest thing any adult likes to do is hear the sound of their own voice.
Talk about their life, yeah.
Talk about their life. Talk to me, right? Let them yell. When clients yell and scream and get angry, it shows to me that I'm getting closer, because they would not exhibit that emotion if they didn't care. And the one who cares the least holds all the power. So if you're yelling and screaming at me because fuck that guy and I'm not doing this and screw him, and you're hanging up the phone, you're calling me back, or you're going to text me tomorrow, or you're going to email me in 3 days and be like, where is he?
Can we get that? Yeah.
Like, you could make a bad investment that would still be better than a smart spend.
Really? So what's a smart spend? Or what's a smart spend versus a bad spend?
I don't really know anything that's a smart spend, but you spend money. When you spend money, you don't get an investment back. And when you invest money, at least you got a possibility